Hello, K-3 Math Universal Screening and Progress Monitoring Measure users and information seekers. This video will help you interpret the data you have gathered universally using these measures so far. If you have administered the K-3 math measures universally, you may be ready to input the data you have collected in order to, 1, determine how your students compare to other students across the state on these measures, 2, determine if core support improvements are needed, and 3, determine who you may need to provide additional instruction and intervention to in your building or district in the area of early mathematics. One way to make sense of this data is to use the local norming Excel file. It can be found for you to download within the K-3 Math Universal Screening and Progress Monitoring Live Binder here. Let's download this template. We click right here and walk through the possible use. First, you will notice when you open this up that the first page is an introduction. There are some directions for the use of this workbook here, and also a place for you to put your district and school name. You can use this workbook for one school, one grade level, or a whole district's data if that meets your needs. However, it's important to note that the statistics that are performed here for you behind the scenes will give you information about how the students in this file are performing compared to the other students in this file. We are adding the statewide normative data in a static table as it is collected, which I will show you in a minute. But when student scores highlight as red in this file, due to being below a certain score, they are highlighted based on a comparison with other students in this file, not based on statewide norms. However, I will also show you some ways to use the statewide norms to determine how all of your students compare to the rest of the state. Let's get started. So after this first page, we can scroll over. We're going to look at these tabs along the bottom to the second page, which is where you will input the kindergarten data. As it indicated in the directions on the first page, only the peach cells are able to be typed in. You will see on this page, the first column has a place for you to put student name, and then the second column has a place for you to put teacher name. As we continue to scroll across, the student name column stays frozen, even if we go all the way across, stays frozen so that you can easily see which student's data you're working with. Let's go back. Whoops. Went a little far. Just a minute. Okay, so we're back within this Excel file. So now we have put in the student names, put in the teacher names, and we've scrolled across only in the peach cells and what we're allowed to put scores in. And we put in our fall scores for Mrs. McFly's class. We'll just pretend that we're only doing Mrs. McFly's class right now. So now we can see for kindergarten, the next columns for each subtest raw score and total time in seconds. And you're only putting in this data. And then the other columns for accuracy percentage or percent correct and rate populate automatically based on the formulas. As these are put in, you'll see the accuracy score for some students, like here, will turn to red. So when we see that these turn to red, this is because the sheet is calculating the normative data as scores are entered and highlighting students falling below the 25th percentile based on this group of students as red. It's important that no decisions regarding student performance are made until all scores for that group and time of year in the fall are inputted. This is because the group's norms may change as more data is inputted. Once we have put in all of the data for the group we're examining, we can examine our normative data and compare it to the state norms on the next page. So if we scroll over to where it says kindergarten norms, following each data input page for a grade level is a norms page. No information on this page can be manipulated. The tables on the left-hand side represent the local normative data collected in this workbook. So if you have one school's data in this workbook, these are your school norms, what you see right here. If you have a whole district's data in this workbook, then you have your whole district norms here. When we look at this data, we can see that the scores in our school that represent the median score and each percentile rank. So if we go across, here's the median with a raw score, the percent correct score, the rate for each subtest. When we talk about a percentile rank of a score, this is just the percentage of the scores in the group that are equal to or lower than that score. So if we look at this local norm table and see that the 75th percentile for matching quantity to number is equal to 3, then that would mean 75% of students in this group, just the group that you just entered, 75% of the students in this group scored at or below a raw score of 5. This would be the same for each of these scores. So the score found for this subtest at the 50th percentile, which we see here it's 1, would mean that 50% of students in this group fell below a 1 for the raw score, fell at or below this score. You'll also notice that since the median score is the middle score in the whole distribution, so if all the students' scores were rank ordered, then the median is the middle score, then this is always the same as the 50th percentile score. You can look across and see these are the same. Since this table marked local norms is only depicting the performance of your students, your total group performance can be compared to the performance of the statewide normative data. So if we scroll over, you'll see the statewide normative data. This table currently has statewide normative data for the fall, but will be updated at each benchmarking period during the 17-18 school year. If we compare the median, or 50th percentile, for your local norms to the state norms, you can quickly see if your students are performing at a commensurate level with the statewide sample of students, or above or below. You can see the raw score statewide median for matching quantity to number was 2. And in this fake sample of students, it was a 1. However, it should be noted that our data thus far indicates that there may be overrepresentation in the sample at some grade levels and measures in students with very low scores. In other words, even if your normative data mimics that of the statewide norms, it would be wise to analyze your student performance in greater depth and have hearty conversations about where you would expect your students to be performing on many of these skills. At the end of the 2017-2018 school year, we will be developing criterion scores based on valid and reliable outcome measures for mathematics in order to determine what score levels on these measures may predict later math success. In the meantime, to determine locally those students with the greatest need and those students that may need additional instruction and/or monitoring, this student sheet does highlight, if we go back to the student sheet, those scores in red that are within the bottom 25% of your group of students. You can see some of those here. This can be a good first starting place to ensure that students that show very high risk are given adequate opportunities to learn and provided rigorous instruction in early number concepts. In addition, if your data indicates that there are a substantial number of students struggling with early number, you can refer to this tab on the live binder called Instructional Implications. To get more information regarding some ways to infuse quality instruction in early numeracy throughout the day. So you can see here there's an instructional report for kindergarten, for first grade measures, for second grade measures, and for third grade measures. These can be helpful for schools if your teachers want a refresher on, first off, what do these scores mean? Each of the scores is described here. What the most important score for this time of year is. So for all of the measures, accuracy is the first score we're looking at in the fall. We want students to become very accurate on these measures before we start really looking at automaticity or efficiency. And then there's a description of each measure, what it's about, what it includes, and some instructional implications. Okay. In addition, if you need more information or assistance with your data or instructional practices within your multi-tiered system of support, please do not hesitate to contact your regional MTSS consultant. Thank you for all you do for the students of North Carolina.